I don't know if you know that last song is by a band named Leland. And if you were to close your eyes, Jordan sounds just like Leland. I mean, it is unbelievable. So good. Hey, I am so excited to be speaking with you guys today. I feel like I've been on the church tour recently, and what that means is 2 weeks ago, I was invited to speak at this really big church in Salisbury called Oak Ridge, and so I got to speak there. And listen, I was standing on that stage, and I was like, this is way bigger than our basement. I mean, that place was huge. They had like a place in the back for just the pastor that had an ensuite bathroom. I'm like, that's more toilets than our entire church, okay? But I got to speak there. Then last weekend, our Fenwick campus, Bay Shore Fenwick, launched their second service, and they asked me to come speak there. And then I got to speak in Millsboro, and man, it's been amazing kind of speaking at all the different churches locally. But man, there is no crowd like the home crowd. There is no stadium like the home. Okay, this is a basement, all right? But let's be honest. I'm so glad to be hanging out with you guys. And today we're starting this brand new series called Famous Jesus Stories, where we're going to look at the classics, okay? And so maybe you've heard some of these stories. If you haven't, no worries. That's why we're here. But to start out today, opening question. I'm curious, do we have any pickleball fans in the room? Anybody? Don't make me the only pickleball addict in church this morning. Raise your hands. Okay, you all are the ones making all this racket around here. HOAs all over Lewis and Rehoboth are like freaking out because we're making so much noise. But I want to tell you a little bit about my pickleball journey. 2 years ago, my smoking hot wife, who's actually in the 8:30 service, which has never happened before, I don't think. People in this service think she is not real. She is here and she is real. But 2 years ago, Stacy basically drugged me out on the pickleball court to go play. Now listen, I didn't want to play pickleball. Like, what in the world kind of a sport name is a pickleball? And so I didn't want to play pickleball, and like I'm in the stage of life where I'm so busy, I'm not trying to add things. I'm in subtraction mode. Anybody with me? But my wife asked me, and she was looking smoking hot, and I had ulterior motives 100%, so I said yes. And now I love pickleball. I got pickleball shoes. I got a pickleball bag. I got 80-year-old pickleball players sliding into my DMs. It is weird. And then just so I can get this out of the way, I know some of you after the service are going to be like in the lobby like, hey, Joel, we should play together. And I would love to play pickleball with you, but I don't think that's a good idea. And here's why. Because you right now, you look at me as your pastor and you think like I got my life together. But if I play you in pickleball, I get highly competitive. And I will try to crush you. And if you start crushing me, I will start sinning. And you don't need to see your pastor in that situation, okay? But I love pickleball. And so a couple weeks ago, I went to our neighborhood. We have this open play pickleball time, and I go, and there was a guy waiting to play. There was people out there playing. There was a guy named Alan waiting to play, and so I went and sat next to Alan, and I hadn't seen Alan since last summer. So I was like, Alan, man, what's up? What have you been up to? And he's like, well, I had a heart attack. And he said, 80% of my heart is like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Alan. And he's like, oh yeah, also over the winter I fell down my steps and I broke my leg, so my leg went like, and he's like, so I can't really like move. And so he's like, 80% of my heart doesn't work, my leg is like, nobody really knows why I'm alive right now, so do you want to play pickleball with me? I'm like, Alan, all right, 80% of your heart doesn't work, I'm 100% sure you should not be playing pickleball. But then there were these ladies who just got done with their game, and so they invited me and Alan to play pickleball, and that's when my competitive nature, also known as my sinful nature, took over. And I was like, Alan, let's crush these ladies. But I'm thinking to myself, I got to play with 180% effort because Alan, you know. And so we were like the underdogs of the century. And when Alan said he can't really move anymore because of his broken leg, Alan wasn't lying. Alan just like stood there the whole time, and I'm like running circles around Alan. I think I jumped over Alan one time. I'm just trying to beat these ladies. Now, how old were these ladies? That's not the point. Don't worry about that. The point of the story is, Me and Alan beat the ladies, okay? Me and Alan did it. And Alan was so excited that he just stood there, okay? But we were the underdogs. Now, I'm curious, how many of you like to root for the underdog? You like to root for the underdog? Let me see your hands, okay? Oh, yeah, you would have rooted for me and Alan. But I love rooting for the underdogs. I love rooting for the last picked player or the last picked team, or like the Cinderella story team, or maybe it's the Jamaican bobsled team that's coaches John Candy. Okay, now I'm just telling you the movie Cool Runnings, but I love rooting for the underdog, which is why I love rooting against the Kansas City Chiefs. Also known as the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, so anyway. But I love an underdog story, and speaking of famous Jesus stories, maybe one of the most famous underdog Jesus stories he ever told was a story, or that involved Jesus, is a story called the story of Zacchaeus. And so we have this picture we'll throw up here on the screen. This is Zacchaeus, and if you don't know who Zacchaeus was, he was a wee little man. A wee little man was, and he climbed up in a, okay, these are the Sunday school people right here. But I just want to read you this famous Jesus story. So this is in Luke chapter 19, starting in verse 1. We're going to go through the whole story. Just hang with me. It says, Jesus entered Jericho, and he made his way through the town. There was a wee little man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was, what was he? He was too short to see over the crowd. And so he was an underdog. He's this short guy. And so he ran ahead and he climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and he called him by name. Zacchaeus, he said, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and he took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were so pumped that Jesus picked this underdog that they were yelling, Zacchaeus, Zacchaeus, No, that's not what they did. The people, when the people were, what were they? Displeased. He has gone to the guests of what? A notorious sinner, and they grumbled. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and he said, I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I have cheated people on their taxes, I'll give them back 4 times as much. Jesus responded, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man, also known as Jesus, came to, what did Jesus come to do? Seek and save those who are lost. Do you know what this story means, Bay Shore? It means Jesus loves the underdogs as well. Jesus doesn't root for the underdogs. Jesus loves the underdogs themselves. Come on, aren't you grateful for that? I mean, I'm looking at some of you are some underdogs in the room. And what I meant to say is notorious sinners in the room. I've hung out with some of you guys. And so we should be grateful about this. But I just want to, my goal is just that I want to remind us as a church to keep rooting for the underdogs, because Jesus roots for the underdogs. And to do that, I wanted to break this story up into 3 different characters, and we can put this next slide on the screen. There's the crowd, and then there's Zacchaeus, and then there's Jesus. And if you're taking notes, you can write this down, or if you're taking pictures with your phone, or maybe you just remember this. But the crowd, we'll start with them. The crowd teaches us this, to not look down. And you could add to that, if you're taking notes, to not look down on other people. Now, if you were to look me up on LinkedIn, I'm not there. So I thought I'd give you kind of like a, on the stage version of my background. A little bit about my history with the church. I've been working for the church so far, as of this year. This is my 20th year with Bay Shore. 20 years. It's a long time. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. My mom started that clap, I'm pretty sure. But I started working for the church when I was 22. Now, when I was 22, I was going to get my undergrad in business. I was working at a restaurant. And the church actually needed a business administrator. The Millsboro campus needed a business administrator. And so they called me. And they're like, hey, we know you're getting your undergrad in business. Would you be interested in, interviewing for the business administrator job? And I was like, oh, okay. No, I'm good. I'm going to keep working in the restaurant. And when I get done working, the restaurant, I'm going to get a real job after college, one that pays me more money. And so I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And so, no lie, a few days after I said, no, I don't really want to do that, I was doing the closing shift at the restaurant. I was cleaning the fryer and cleaning the side of the fryer, and my hand slipped into the fryer. I fried my hand. And I started to think, I bet the church doesn't own fryers. And so I called him up. I was like, you guys still have that job opening? And so that's when I got on the team, And so my first day on the job was January 3rd, 2005. I showed up rocking my khakis, and I had a fried hand. And when I got there, they were like, well, we're going to take you to your office. And I was like, an office? Okay. And then I had a nameplate. And it said Joel Tice. And remember, I got hired as the business administrator. It said Joel Tice, assistant to the business administrator. I'm like, what is this? Is this like Dwight Schrute from The Office? Like, what? And there was not a business administrator. So I'm thinking, who do I assist? And I never worked in the church before, so I was like, okay, I guess I just assist the Lord. I don't know how this works. My point is, I had a nameplate, I had a title, and it wasn't all that great. Let's be honest. And if you look at the story of Zacchaeus, he had a title, and his title was not all that great. And if you forget what his title was, let's go back to verse 2. And this is what it says. He was the chief tax collector in the region. Now, a tax collector, in and of themselves, that's bad enough. But he wasn't just a tax collector. What was he? The chief tax collector. I mean, this is way worse. Like if my kids speak in a different language. Any of your kids speak in a different language? Like if my kids were to describe Zacchaeus, they would say, Dad, Zacchaeus, he's dripping a little bit because he's rich, But he's not even mid. He's sus. Cap bet. And I just look at my kids, I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about anymore. But they would tell me that's bad, all right? And it gets worse because Zacchaeus' nameplate didn't just say chief tax collector. His nameplate also said notorious sinner. What's interesting is in Hebrew, the name Zacchaeus means this, and we'll put it up here. Zacchaeus means pure, innocent, and righteous. Yeah, that's funny, isn't it? Because the crowd, the people around Zacchaeus would not have called him pure, innocent, and righteous. They thought he was the worst. His reputation was the worst because if you don't know, a chief tax collector in that time period, they worked for the enemy. It was a Jewish person who would work for Rome to overtax their own people and steal from their own people every single day. And so the crowd would not have looked at Zacchaeus as pure, innocent, and righteous. If they were to make his nameplate, they would have put this on his nameplate: traitor, guilty, and a lowlife. Sus, cap, bet, loser. And so Zacchaeus was so bad that tax collectors in this time period, they weren't even allowed in the temple to worship God. Okay, it'd be kind of like modern translation. Zacchaeus wouldn't even be allowed to come into church to worship. Like it would be like us saying at the front door, like, hey, do you work for the IRS? Does anybody work for the IRS, by the way? Let me change it. Do you work for an unnamed government department that taxes people? But Zacchaeus couldn't even go into the temple to worship God. And so what does he do? In verse 3, we'll throw this up here. He tried to get a look at Jesus. Not in the temple because he couldn't go there. He tried to get a look at Jesus. But there was a problem. He was short. And this week I thought there was also a problem because Zacchaeus was also short in character. You see what I did there? Short. See, I work hard on this stuff, okay? I worked hard on this part too. One short glimpse at Jesus can change a lifetime of being short in character. And I think sometimes we forget that we're no different than Zacchaeus. We're all short on character. I think we forget who we were before we knew Jesus. We forget how disappointed we made other people, how disappointed we made ourselves. We still do. We forget that we were just like Zacchaeus before Zacchaeus started looking for Jesus. And I just want to remind us, Bay Shore, that we are all underdogs in life. We are all losing on the scoreboard of character. We're all losing on that scoreboard, and the only reason that we're winning is because of one name, y'all, and that is Jesus. And can we just take 5 seconds in the middle of this service, in the middle of this message, and just thank him that he is the reason that we are winning at all. He is the only reason. Zacchaeus, I love him because he was a fellow struggler. And the crowd literally looked down on him. And Bay Shore, I never want to be a church that looks down on the underdogs. Can we agree that we never will look down on the underdogs in this church? Listen, that's not who Jesus was, and that's not who Bay Shore is. We don't look down, we lift up. We don't condemn with hate, we coach with love. We don't judge, we forgive. We don't root against the underdogs. We are the underdogs. And the only reason that notorious sinner is not written on our nameplate is because of Jesus. That's the only reason. And so all Zacchaeus did was look for Jesus, which is why we're all here this morning. To get a glimpse of the one who changed our nameplate from notorious sinner to pure, innocent, and righteous. And I just want us as a church to learn from the crowd, to never look down on the underdogs, because we are the underdogs. We are the Jamaican bobsled team, man. And so the crowd teaches us to not look down. The Zacchaeus, we'll look at this one. Zacchaeus teaches us to let Jesus lift you up. Now, I'm curious, anybody been to Disney recently, or any Disney fans in the room? Raise your hand if you give Mickey some money. Yeah, a lot of you have. My in-laws have. My in-laws took our family to Disney several years ago, and I actually have a picture, and sorry, Ted and Teresa, you're not in this picture, but Tinkerbell's in this picture. See Tinkerbell? She showed up for $49.95, okay? We went to Disney in the middle of COVID. And so it was May, we're in Florida, and you had to wear face masks the whole time. Thanks, COVID. But Disney had a little trick. Mickey had this little rule that if you were taking pictures, you could take your face mask down. Come on, somebody. So we were taking pictures in front of porta potties, in front of trash cans. We're taking pictures in front of the sign that says, don't take your pictures unless you're taking your face mask down. It was like 9,000 degrees, so we took like 9,000 pictures. We were like the Kardashians, just taking pictures the whole time. I'll never forget that. But I'll never forget the first ride we tried to ride was Space Mountain. And my boy Nixon was too short, and so they told us that we couldn't ride the ride, and we had our first Disney meltdown, which is part of the Disney experience. And so he melted down. The second thing we tried to do is we tried to ride let me put this picture up here, Tomorrowland Speedway. We try to go ride this. Now, if you've never ridden Tomorrowland Speedway, these cars go a top speed of 3. It's like you're on Route 24, basically, is where you are. So we get to the front of the line, and the guy looks at Nixon, and he's like, I don't know if he's tall enough. I was like, sir, have you seen the movie Terminator? Because this kid will turn into Terminator if you do not let him ride one of these cars. And so the guy's like, okay, yeah, you can ride one of the cars. And so we go out there, and Nixon was too short to hit the pedals. So the whole time, like, it was like, and I'm used to that because I didn't know she was coming to this service. Anyway, and speaking of my wife, okay, we're going, Stacy and Nora were right behind us. They kept on running into the back of us, which I'm used to because, anyway, I can't breathe. I'm pulling down my face mask. I'm asking Nixon if I can help him. He's yelling, Dad, I got it. And we have a quick video. It's not even that funny, but this is a video of it. those core memories for me. And, it's one, you all have those priceless memories in your life, right? This wasn't priceless, thousands of dollars. But there was a detail in that story that was important. The detail was Nixon was too what to reach the pedals? He was too short, which caused us some problems. And so if Zacchaeus were here this morning, he would be like, okay, being short does cause problems. And here's the problem that he had. In verse 3, he tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. Now, quick question. Let's just leave this up for a second. Why do you think this detail of him being too short is even in the story? And it's kind of a weird detail. Like, think about it. We don't know the size of Noah's hands, and Noah used his hands to build the first Carnival cruise ship, also known as the Ark. We don't know the size of Simon Peter's Birkenstocks, and Simon Peter walked on water. We don't know the size of Samson's biceps, which he used to push down a building. If I were to guess how big his biceps were, a good example might be, never mind, I'm just kidding. But why is this detail in the story? Like he's too short. That's a weird detail to include. And I want to kind of nerd out on you for a second. Archaeologists have studied this part of the world and different buildings in this time period and the different size entryways in this time period. And archaeologists believe that Jewish men 2,000 years ago, the average height was about 5 feet tall. Now, that would make us all Shaquille O'Neal if we go back in time. But Zacchaeus wasn't 5 foot tall. He was a wee little man. A wee little man was he. So why is this detail in the story? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know, but I 100% don't think it's an accident that it's in the story. And this week I started to wonder, I wonder if it's in the story because he felt short, because he was short. I wonder if it's in the story because we all feel like we're falling short in life. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. So let me just confess to you guys. I feel like I'm falling short as a husband. I feel like I'm falling short as a dad. I feel like I'm falling short as a leader and a pastor. I feel like I'm falling short in my behavior. I feel like I'm falling short in my self-control. I feel like I'm falling short in my faith. I feel like I'm falling short all the time. I feel like a wee little man every single day. And I'm just curious, is anybody else in the room, if you feel like you're falling short in some area of your life, just say, go shorty, it's your birthday. There. If you're singing that song, you just fell short, okay? One thing I think Christians can get way better at is for us to stop pretending to look like we're so holy all the time. I think one thing Christians get better at is stop trying to pretend to look like we're some praise hands emoji icon 24/7. We try to look like we're so tall all the time, and we're all falling short. Just like Zacchaeus. That's who we are. And that's not our downfall. That is our ticket to look for the one who lifts us up. Yes. And so this is what I want you to know. When I feel short as a husband, let me back up for a second. I'm so over when I feel like I fall short, that leading me to shame. Yeah. I want, when I feel like I'm falling short, for that to lead me to Jesus. And so when I feel like I'm falling short as a dad, this is what I want to be like. Jesus, I'm coming to you. When I'm falling short as a husband, Jesus, I'm coming to you. When I feel like I'm falling short as a leader and a pastor, Jesus, I'm coming to you. When I feel like I'm falling short in my behavior, Jesus, I'm coming to you. When I feel like I'm falling short in my self-control or my faith, Jesus, I'm coming to you. Because Bay Shore, when we feel like we're falling short in our temper, Jesus can lift us with his peace. He can lift us with his patience. When we feel like we're falling short in our fight against addiction, he can lift us with a way out. When we feel like we're falling short in our strength, he can lift us with courage. When we feel like we're falling short in wisdom, he can lift us. When we feel like we're falling short in direction, he can lift us with courage. When we feel like we're falling short in life, he can lift us with his love. And I don't know if that message part was for anybody, but it is for me. It's for me. And so Zacchaeus teaches us to let Jesus lift you up. Yes. And then the third idea is this. Jesus teaches us to keep looking up. To keep looking up. Now, little Wikipedia about Bay Shore. Bay Shore was not named, our church was not named Bay Shore until around the year 2000. Before that, our church was named Gumboro Fellowship Church. Because our original campus, our campus that this campus launched out of is in Gumboro, Delaware, home of nothing. Okay, it is, smaller than Zacchaeus. All right, there's just cornfields, and then there is our church. And my dad was here last weekend. My dad has been our lead pastor at Bay Shore and Millsboro Fellowship Church since 1981, and he watches these. So can we just put our hands together for him, just for thanking him for his leadership? And so, back in the 80s, I was a wee little man at the church. And let's say it's 1987. I'm 5 years old. I was the preacher's kid. And so I remember one time I told my Sunday school teacher that my dad is the president of this place. So I'm sort of a big deal. So I apologize, Miss Connie Lathberry, for that moment. But in 1987, we had a Christmas play at the church. And I got cast as the star. Now, I know some of you are thinking like, well, a little bit of nepotism happening there. Okay, I think you misunderstood when I said the star. You know how the wise men had to follow a star? That was the star that I was cast as, okay? But in my mind, I was the star. Okay, and this was Gumboro Broadway, And I lived in a church parsonage in the church parking lot in the trailer, okay? And that's where the star came from. And forget Joseph and Mary and Jesus in the Christmas play. We got to talk about the star. And so the night of the play happened. And the biggest scene is where after Jesus is born, Mary and Joseph are supposed to be center stage, holding baby Jesus. The star, okay, or a star was supposed to be in the background, just kind of like fading in the background. But I'm not background material. I am star material, and so we have a picture of me right here. Move over, Joseph. Mary, would you stand up? Actually, I need the seat. The reason I told you, and this is an embarrassing story for me, honestly. I still hear about it from like old school Gumboro Fellowship people. They're like, remember when you did that? I'm like, oh, please let me forget. I thought I was the main character in the play. And isn't it true that sometimes we live our lives like we are the main character? And I just showed up to church today to remind you that you are not the main character. You're not the star. And yes, your spouses all paid me hundreds of dollars to say that right then. But do you know why you're not the main character? Because I feel like I'm the main character. And there can't be two. And in the story of Zacchaeus, it's easy to think that Zacchaeus has got to be the main character, right? I mean, it's the story of Zacchaeus, but the main character in life and the Bible is always who? Jesus is always the main character. And if we want to learn how to love the lost, love the underdogs, we got to learn it from the actual main character. And so let's go back to the story, back to the second character in the story, Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus, he's too short to see over the crowd. He can't see Jesus. And so this rich, short guy climbs a tree. And in my mind, I always just imagine Joe Pesci climbing a tree. I got ChatGPT to put Joe Pesci in the tree for me. We'll put this up on the screen. Never mind. There it is. No, that's not it. There it is. Anyway, that's for free. But Zacchaeus was this short, rich, notorious sinner, Zacchaeus Pesci. He can't get to Jesus in the temple, so he's trying to worship Jesus or see Jesus from the tree. And the coolest moment of his entire life is captured in this story. In verse 5, it says this. It said, when Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. He looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. Now, we got to picture this. Jesus was way more popular than I think we realize. So Jesus walks into Jericho. There's literally crowds all around him just pressing in on Jesus. And Jesus is moving through this town of Jericho. He gets to this sycamore tree and he looks up and he locks eyes with Zacchaeus. And I couldn't help but wonder this week, was Zacchaeus the one looking for Jesus? Or was Jesus looking for Zacchaeus? And so Jesus looks up at Zacchaeus. Now, I bet you this is the first time someone's ever looked up at Zacchaeus in his life. You think that? I mean, everybody's always looked down on Zacchaeus. Jesus literally looked up at Zacchaeus because Jesus has he is a pattern of looking up at the people that our culture and our world and our churches have been looking down on. Yeah. That's what he does. He looks up at people. Not at their behavior, but he looks up at us. We're valuable to him. And that's for somebody in the room. Somebody's been looking down on you. You need to know Jesus will look up at you. Yeah. Not at your behavior, but at you. He would look up at you. Amen. And so Zacchaeus sees Jesus. And Jesus calls him by name. Now, do you remember what Zacchaeus' name meant? Yes. Can we put up what his name meant? Pure, innocent, and righteous. And remember, Zacchaeus, after he interacted with Jesus, he sold everything. He gave the money back that he had stole, and he started following Jesus. That's how Jesus could look at someone like Zacchaeus, who was a traitor and guilty and a lowlife, and he could say, no, you're not that. You are pure, innocent, and righteous. And I just want to tell you, when Jesus looks at us, he doesn't see traitor, guilty, and lowlife. He sees pure, innocent, and righteous. And Zacchaeus was in a tree when Jesus said this, when he called him by name. What's the point of the tree? Why a tree? That's a weird detail. The tree represents the cross. And the reason that Jesus can look at us and not say, hey, lowlife, guilty, traitor, is because of the tree. And the tree is the reason he can look at us and say, you're pure, you are innocent, and righteous. And I just want to tell you, I just came to church this morning to tell you, you are the greatest underdog story of all time. You are the greatest underdog. You are the Cinderella story, and I just think we should take a moment and thank Jesus that he has been the one who rescued us and made us that great underdog. Which is why I never want to be a church that stops rooting for the underdogs. We will always root for the underdogs because we are the underdogs. We just found Jesus in a tree.